So you want to build Tistina, the new TCG exclusive archetype in Duelist Nexus that looks like rocks and yet are aquas for some reason? An archetype that can do this, and this, and this. Well, you've come to the right place. My name is ToonWorld, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing to you all how to build PUNK Tistina post Duelist Nexus. Here are some boring disclaimers you should read right before we get into the... Okay, so as we go through this deck profile, I want you all to keep one thing in mind, and that is to treat this deck as a pure PUNK deck with Tistina cards added in. The reason why I say that is because that helps you visualize the ratios I have here a lot easier. Basically, you can treat this deck as any pure PUNK build you've seen, except with the Tistina cards substituting themselves in over something such as, say, Fenrir's, Dark Ruler No Mars, Evenly's. I know that sounds a bit daunting since those cards are pretty strong, but I promise you it is pretty cool what this combination of cards can do. So given that, let's segue into the PUNK cards. We are maximizing out on Xayman, Ogre Dance, and Foxy Tune. Again, pure PUNK deck, you want to maximize on the core of the deck that can tutor out each other. Then we're playing 2 Deer Note, which is a key combo piece. In PUNK itself, you don't want to play 3, I think that's too much, and then I think 1 is too little for PUNK as a primary driver of the deck. Finally, we have Shirakusai, Wagon, and Spider. You need 1 copy of each, maybe 2 Shirakusai for some of you, but 1 seems okay since Shirakusai lets you fusion summon, Wagon lets you search the field spell, and Spider lets you search your trap card. That's all I'm going to say about the PUNK cards, mainly because I'm going to assume you know what this particular archetype does. If you do not, I highly recommend checking out some of my other videos where I do showcase to you how the PUNK cards work. Now, the Tistina cards are the star of today's video. And the reason why I wanted to showcase this particular build is because I think the Tistina cards have a lot of promise. All of their cards are very strong, minus the trap card, which is about average. The fact that Demigod becomes a quick effect Book of Eclipse. If you have Tistina on board, it also wipes face-up cards from the field that aren't flipped face down. That is incredible, and I think once we get a way to summon Crystal God a lot easier than the field spell, which is still a good card, but obviously has some limitations, we'll get to the spells and traps when we do, then this deck might become its own thing and or become meta since it will be more consistent as opposed to this particular list, which is very, very cool, I promise you, but relying on Bishop Balkan is kind of awkward at times. Anyhow, with the Tistina names, I'm going to also make the assumption you've read what these cards do, so I don't have to go into each of their effects as I talk about each individual name. Hound of Tistina, Sentinel Tistina. Hound, I think having at least 1 copy is nice since it might catch your opponent off guard if you're able to utilize its effect to have your Tistina monsters attack directly if they control face down card. So 1 copy here. 1 copy of Sentinel. So you might be thinking, why aren't we playing more than 1 copy? The reason why is because 1, we're relying on the PUNK engine to do most of the heavy lifting in this deck. 2nd, because Sentinel isn't that great of a card to normal summon, you usually want to be able to summon itself with its own effect to plus using that effect as opposed to just normal summoning it and then you don't get to usually use its effect that well. There's also the fact that this deck does help turbo out Crystal God Tistina without the requirement of using the other Tistina names. Recall that we're going to Bishop Balkan, summon tokens to our opponent's field, and then use the field spell to summon out the Crystal God Tistina. You can check out my combo video to visualize that. That is why we only need the 1 copy to dump off of the field spell before we summon Tistina. Thirdly here, we have Demigod the Tistina at 2. I think it's great at 2 because you can search this off of the continuous spell Tistina has, and then summon itself immediately to search a Tistina card, since all it requires is a Tistina name on field as opposed to a Tistina monster. So I think it's a great card to have over something say like Sentinel, which if you search it off the continuous spell, you can't summon it for free. You do need a monster for Tistina Sentinel as opposed to Demigod. So 2 Demigod of Tistina is nice. Also, if you're forced to send this to graveyard, your combo doesn't work very well. Having 2 guarantees that in the case you somehow draw all of your Tistina names, you at least have 1 copy of Demigod in your deck so you can, you'll have at least one copy of Demigod you can just search and then summon later on. Finally, the one Crystal God of Tistina. This card is necessary because Demigod requires Demigod requires Crystal God in order to utilize this Book of Eclipse effect. And also, this card does help you board wipe. Basically, these two do have the same effect, except this has the effect only during your main phase, and when it's destroyed, Demigod can only use it on your opponent's turn. So you can basically cycle these two, wipe your opponent's board during your turn, and then their turn until they're out of cards. So really promising archetype. These are the ratios I've chosen here. Of course, the deck was just released, and ratios might change here on out, but for now, I think this is valid. That was the Tistina names, that was the PUNK names as well. To get on with the accessories, as well as the hand traps themselves, Fengli and Dinotherium, these are your key combo components. You can check out the combo video I posted recently to understand why they're used, but you need to play one of each. And then the hand traps, Ghost Ogre is in here because the PUNK engine can potentially search it with Dragon Drive. And then Ash Blossom is nice to have, given that Branded and Labyrinth, they can be checked by this card, and of course it still hits some of the other decks in the format while also hitting a lot of lower tier decks. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a mouthful. Also, hopefully you were not you were able to follow since I was speaking very fast. But these are the main deck monsters. I am very happy with these ratios, so if you have any comments on this particular structure, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll get on with... Alright, so now let's talk about the spells and traps. The 3 Itali, 1 Extreme Session, and 1 Dangerous Gabu. These are self-explanatory in the context of PUNK. You need to play them as they are. You could play 2 Extreme Session if you really want to, since with this deck, AFD will be popping your Extreme Session in a lot of cases, but I felt like 1 is perfectly fine since I'm maximizing out on the Divine Domain, which lets us potentially draw it and not have to use AFD to pop this to search it. So I'm not going to touch on these more. For the 3 Breath of the Tistina, this card is great in my opinion. The reason why, obviously it searches all your Tistina cards by flipping a monster you control face down or an opponent's card if you control a light Tistina. But the reason why I think it's great at 3 is because it has synergy with this deck in the fact that you can fusion summon with face down monsters, and since we use Shirakusa to fusion summon, you could potentially summon your 2 PUNK monsters including Shirakusai, book one of them with Breath of the Tistina, and then you can still fusion summon with that face down monster while being able to search with the Breath of the Tistina. So I think that particular interaction is enough to merit this being played at 3. You can then use this to search, say, Demigod. Demigod, they can search the field spell potentially, and then you can dodge AFD. Or if you're going second, you can use the Divine Domain to out your opponent's board. That does bring us to the Divine Domain, which is obviously key to your combo going first, which involves Bishbalk and AFD, but it is also a great card going second. And that's why I've chosen to maximize it out at 3, because it's essentially a board breaker like Dark Ruler No More. Basically, your opponent most likely is going to control 3 or more monsters going first. Combo decks are very prominent right now. This deck, of course, is a combo deck, though it's not going to be top tier, but that does speak to the combo nature of this format. Basically, you'll be able to activate this effect very often to summon Crystal God Tistina to your field when you're going second, and Crystal God Tistina can potentially destroy your entire opponent's board. And so there's a lot of cases where this won't only just be a combo piece, but it'll also be prominent as a way to play through whatever your opponent establishes. And so that's why I think it's nice to have at 3. What's also nice, of course, is the fact that it does float if destroyed, so even if your opponent chooses to negate it or Ghost Ogre it, whatever it be, it will still summon the Crystal God Tistina, and you'll still be able to try and use Crystal God Tistina's effect to wipe your opponent's field. So that's why I think it's great at 3, and you could potentially bump it down to 2 or 1 since it is searchable. For example, if you want to lean this deck more into the going first part of it, where you again make Bishbalkin and AFD, you can cut it down, but I wanted to give this deck a duality of both. And of course, I did want to flex the Tistina cards since I do find them very entertaining. Finally, the 1 Signs of the Tistina. I do like having it at 1. I know it isn't that great of a card, but it does synergize with this deck in that you can search it with Demigod after you summon Demigod during your combo. then you can link it off with Masquerena to essentially destroy one of your opponent's monsters. So I think that particular synergy does make the best use of it right now. Maybe in the future when Tistina gets more cards, you can potentially use this in a pure Tistina build to do whatever you want. But I think for one, it's okay right now. The last card to talk about here is the Dark Rule Nomar. This is just a throw-in. I think that, again, combo decks are prevalent right now, and so mass removal is nice. And you combine these two, and they're really often a great way to out whatever your opponent makes. I guess the one big struggle for this deck list, as you'll see, is the ability to deal with back row heavy decks like Labyrinth. But overall, I think I'm satisfied with this deck in terms of its relative matchup into most of what the format has to offer. Of course, time will tell because we just started the format for Duelist Nexus, but I have confidence, mainly because the deck seems so cool. Anyhow, my side rant out of the way, let's get on with the extra deck. Is very, very important to get right with this particular combination of archetypes. And the reason why I say that is because it is very combo heavy, it is very specific, and you need very certain cards in the extra deck in order to achieve those boards that you want to be achieving. And so that's why I say very confidently that I believe most of these cards are necessary. The only flex spots I can find right now are the Underworld Goddess and the Baron de Fleur. To showcase to you why, let me explain. The one Rising card, you need this to fusion summon with. Of course, your Tistina combo to get out Crystal God and Demigod doesn't require you to go through the fusion line, though this is a key component of pure PUNK, and so again, since we're treating this deck as a pure PUNK deck with a Tistina package, I like to keep it in. Shionator Transverser, there are some cases where you can't get a monster on your opponent's field that is a non-token, so that you can then later clear your opponent's tokens, summon VI Bishbalkin with Crystal God. And so this lets you exchange one of your cards, most likely the Phantasmal Lord, so that you can then get rid of your opponent's boards. Because remember, you can't flip tokens face down. So if you only have Bishbalkin tokens on your opponent's field, your Crystal God will not be able to wipe them, and your opponent might be able to utilize them for a Link summon. Masquerena Unicorn, I pair these two together because you're going to summon Masquerena a lot of times, and then the best target for it will usually be Unicorn, since you only need one of the material, and that will be the Science of the Tistina. But that's why we also have Underworld Goddess in here in case you want to go for something larger, since sometimes you'll leave stuff on your opponent's board. It'll either be the face down monster you flip face down with Crystal God or a token in certain combos, and so you can use IP Masquerena to link with whatever is on field into Underworld Goddess. Cupid Pitch, a key component of the combo, lets you search Dynetherium so that you can make AFD. Diablantis here so that you can dump Fengli. It is the tuner that you use to make Bishbalkin, since it can target itself to make itself a tuner. AFD helps you search the Divine Domain. Sham Dragon Drive. Dragon Drive isn't part of the Bishbalkin combo that lets you get out Crystal God, but of course it is important for pure PUNK since it does help you do your usual combo, and so you need this in here in case you need to go down that line as opposed to the Bishbalkin into Tistina combo. Metal Marcher, also part of the Bishbalkin combo. Bishbalkin. Baron de Fleur, you could consider this another flex spot. This card can be summoned by using AFD plus a level 3 tuner, which does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen very frequently, which is why I suggest you could change this out, but I like it in here for now. And if you're siding Fenrir, which I want to do, I don't have Fenrirs, you can keep this card in so that you can make it whenever you side in those Fenrirs. Dragite, this is my choice of level 8 Synchro that you make with the Cupid Pitch and level 1 token, and or AFD plus Fengli. You could change this out since sometimes you won't be able to get Rising Carbon Grave, in which case you would probably substitute this for, say, Draco Berserker, maybe Crystal Wing, because again, Fengli plus Ancient Fairy Dragon does work for that. But I've chosen Dragite because I usually am able to get a water in graveyard. PEP and Amazing Dragon, these aren't summoned during your usual AFD Bishbalkin combo for the Tistina cards, but again, pure PUNK build with a Tistina package, you should include these. So let me give myself a breather because I was talking very quickly. Anyhow, this is the extra deck. We'll get on with the... Alright, I have just some quick concluding remarks before I close out the video, and that is, I don't actually know how good this deck is. Obviously, Duelist Nexus just dropped, the new TCG exclusive archetype just dropped as well, and so even though this deck does seem really fun, and really funny for that matter, given how awkward this combo is versus any other combo deck you've probably seen in the past, I don't actually know how well it will fare, because we have yet to test it very extensively in the format, and it might end up being proven to be good, it might end up being proven to be bad, who knows. All I know is that I am fairly confident in the way this deck is built. I'm also fairly confident in the combo itself, so I recommend you all to give it out a try, whether it be on DB, Edo Pro. Maybe if you have the cards, try them out in real life. Otherwise, be hesitant on how good the deck will actually be. It is at the very least a fun deck you can take to locals. So, if during any point in this video and or right now, if you have any comments or questions, please let me know down below. As I always say, I'll always interact with all of you viewers, and really I enjoy doing that as part of my job as a YouTuber. Otherwise, remember to like and subscribe. It does help the channel grow. And this is Toon World, having presented to you all a PUNK Tistina Deck profile, June 2023 post Duelist Nexus, and I'll cue the outro here.